Hey, welcome back. Now, our combat mechanics are looking pretty good, but we still are able to shoot this enemy until its health gets to 0, but it doesn't die. So in this video, we're going to take care of that. First, we need to create an anim montage for enemy death. So let's go into enemies/animations and create a new montage. So animation montage, and we're going to select Grux skeleton. Let's call this enemy death. Now double click enemy death, and in this montage, let's go to the asset browser and search for death. Now there's a death A and a death B. In death B, the enemy falls forward, and in death A, the enemy falls back. Let's go ahead and drag in death A. And for the preview base pose, let's search for idle and select the idle animation from the Grux/animations folder. So here we have a nice dramatic death animation. Now we're going to want to put this animation montage in its own slot. So let's go to Anim Slot Manager, click plus to add a slot, and call this death. And here for the default group, let's click the drop down next to slot, and for slot name, select death. Now go ahead and hit save, and let's go into the animation blueprint in the anim graph, and we're going to add another slot node here. So let's go ahead and drag, type slot, and connect this to the output pose. Now click on our new slot node and select death, and compile and save. So we're now capable of playing the death animation. Now we need to handle this in C++. So let's go back into enemy.h, and we're going to add a new anim montage variable. So let's say anim montage, and let's call this death montage. And I'm going to copy the U property for write weapon socket, since it's edit anywhere, blueprint read write, category combat, and so on. So I'm going to copy that, paste it just above death montage, and give this a comment that says death anim montage for the enemy. Now recall that we have a function called die, and if we go into enemy.cpp, right here in take damage, if our health goes to 0, then we call the die function. And if we go look at the die function, all we're doing is hiding the health bar. But another thing we can do is play the death montage. So we're going to do that by first getting the anim instance. So we're going to say anim instance equals get mesh get anim instance. Now if anim instance and our death montage, if those are both valid, then we can play the montage. So we're going to say anim instance montage play, and we're going to use the death montage. Now in the future, if you wish to use multiple death animations in the montage, then you'll add a jump to section function call. But for now, we're just going to play the montage. Now we're also going to want to disable everything in the behavior tree if the enemy's dead. So let's go back into the editor, and let's go into enemy controller and open enemy blackboard. We're going to add another blackboard key for whether or not the enemy is dead. So let's go ahead and add a new key. This is going to be a bool key, and we'll just call it dead. Go ahead and click save. Now we're going to set the value of dead here in die. So we're going to check to see if enemy controller is valid. And if it is, we're going to get the enemy controller and get blackboard component. And from the blackboard component, we're going to set value as bool. And the first argument will be fname with dead. That's the bool key name. And the second argument will be true. We're setting dead to true. Now, in addition to setting the key value for dead to true, we're also going to make sure that the enemy will no longer move by calling stop movement, which is a function on the controller. So we're going to get enemy controller and call stop movement. Now here in our behavior tree, we have a bunch of behaviors, but we don't want to do any of these if the enemy is dead. So our selector is going to execute its children from left to right and stop executing if one of the children succeeds. So all we need to do is drag off of this and create a sequence node that does absolutely nothing. And we can add a decorator to this by right-clicking, Add Decorator, and Blackboard. And this Blackboard base condition is going to check to see if we're dead. Now, I'm going to call this isDead, and the Blackboard key is going to be dead. Now, if dead is set, in other words, the enemy has died, then this decorator will succeed and the sequence node will execute. Now this means that this node is going to succeed and the selector will never get to the other nodes. So as soon as the dead Blackboard key is true, we will be stuck executing this node over and over again and never get into the other branches. Now for observer aborts, we're going to set this to both, and that way this node and all lower priority nodes will be aborted on result change. So let's go ahead and comment this and say get stuck here if enemy dies. Now we're ready to go ahead and test enemy death. Before we do, let's open our enemy blueprint. So here in enemies, we'll open enemy BP, and let's search for that death montage and set that to enemy death. Compile and save. Now let's see what happens when we shoot the enemy and take away all of its health. And there goes the enemy. It fell down, and it looked pretty cool when it played the death animation. Now, of course, it gets back up when it's finished with the death animation, and that's because we need to take care of what happens when we finish playing the death animation, and we're going to take care of that in the next video. I'll see you then.